100% entertainment, 100% electricity, 100%
Pipebomb Radio with your host, Felix Olmedo.
Be the man. You gotta beat the man.
Austin James.
And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so.
And Nate Milton.
Can you dig it, sucker?
Welcome, everybody, to this Tuesday edition of Pipebomb Radio this evening. Austin and Nate have the night off, but the show must go on. And tonight's show is a very special one. We will bring on a man who undoubtedly is recognized as another one of the great trainer of champions, and his name is Les Thatcher. He, if you remember, most people might remember seeing him in Beyond the Mat. He's helped make a lot of great future wrestlers. If I'm not mistaken, I believe he even worked with molding the one and only the Lunatic Fringe, Dean Ambrose. But I'm going to go ahead and sit down and talk with him about how he got his start, what captivated him about professional wrestling that captivates all of us. At some stage or another, something drags us in, pulls us in, and we're hooked. And I'm going to find out all about that, how his school's doing, and what he's up to. And without any further ado, I will go ahead and give Mr. Thatcher a call here. Bear with me a moment, folks.
All right, sir.
All righty. Now, I wanted to kick things off because I'm always interested in finding out at what point or another people get hooked in, they get pulled in, and just, they stay with it, whether it be as a kid, as a young fan, or as you got older and just kind of appreciated it. At what point in your life did wrestling catch your eye and you've been hooked ever since?
I was about 9 years old.
Oh, okay.
That's been centuries ago, my friend. It's been a long time.
Who were some of your heroes
my
growing
first.
Up?
Huh?
Who were some of your heroes growing up?
Oh, well, I enjoyed. I was always a fan of the baby faces, and when I say the guy who was my childhood idol, you'll say, well, he's not a baby face, but he was here, and that would be Nature Boy Buddy Rogers.
I believe that. And it's funny, the hometown boys seem to be, wherever they go, no matter when they come home, they're always cheered and just revered and looked up and like, oh, that's our boy.
Well, he's actually a New Jersey guy, and
okay.
But here in Ohio, for whatever reason, the Al Half promotion, which back when I was a kid was one of the I found this out obviously later, one of the largest in the country. They covered 5 states. Always used Rogers as a babyface. Why? I'm not sure, but yeah, and plus, if you look back, he was an amazing performer.
Way ahead of his time.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay. And as you got older and started to want to pursue it, at what point did you say, you know what, I'm going to get involved in this and I'm going to make it some part of my life? Make a living.
Well,
in it.
Like I say, I became a fan. I became involved in organized athletics when I was 7 years old, playing baseball here. But baseball, football, basketball. I started playing around with amateur wrestling at age 12. But the thought of being a pro wrestler, I guess it was always sort of in my mind. But then I really decided to seriously pursue it, probably, I guess, when I was about late 17 years of age or 18 years old, I guess. And, of course, it was a closed shop. And, yeah, so it wasn't like today. You could Google professional wrestling and find out that it's all show and it's predetermined and there's 9,000 places to train, and most of them are bogus. But anyway,
yeah, you're right.
Anyway, I saw, I mentioned the Al Half promotion, and I ventured up to his office, which is in Reynoldsburg, Ohio, just outside of Columbus. And of course, told him I wanted to be a professional wrestler. I was 18 years old at the time, and about 175 pounds. And even as a junior heavyweight, I was too small. And So, but they were a guy named Frankie Taliber, who I didn't know at the time, obviously was a booker, but I met him later once I'd broken into business, was very nice to me and polite, and so put on some size, kid, get some more experience, and come back and see us. Okay, so anyway, I was sort of frustrated. And then I picked up a Wrestling Review magazine, which was the major newsstand publication of the times. This would have been 1959, 1960. And so there was a story about Tony Santos, a promoter based in Boston, who was training young athletes to be professional wrestlers. So I sat down and wrote him a letter. And, of course, back then, no tweets, no text, no, that sort of thing. No internet. So anyway, I got a little trifold brochure back talking about his training camp and the cost and this and that. And basically what it was, Felix, was the forerunner of all professional wrestling schools. And so in late February of 1960, 55 years ago, I got on a Greyhound bus here in Cincinnati and made my way to Boston to start my training as a professional wrestler.
Okay, definitely. And it also mentions, I'm just kind of looking at your website, for those who have not seen or heard about the website. Where have you been? No, I'm kidding. It's lesthatcher.com. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's going to be, and you can find actually a lot more about me currently in terms of a trainer and everything at epwt.com, eliteprowrestlingtraining.com, but it's epwt.com, which was a name that we came up with, Harley Race and Ricky Steamboat and I, back in 2003. But anyway, yeah, you can find me at both those places. Okay,
and it talks about also that at one point, and David, you were a part of the very first four-color WWF magazine, and you designed it and edited it for Mr. McMahon Jr. in 1978?
Yes. Well, actually, before that, I did if you've seen that, if you happen to see that magazine or the cover or a copy of that, I first started how Vince and I came to doing something with that is I was doing a similar magazine for Mid-Atlantic, for the Crockett promotion based out of Charlotte. And we had escalated. Actually, back then, we were the first magazine to use the slick paper, the more expensive paper. Most of the magazines then were on the very dull, I don't know what you call gray, or, the cheaper, and most everything was black and white. We did the first centerfolds, first all full-color magazine. And our covers were unique for the Mid-Atlantic as well as for the WWF magazine because there was a Cal Bayer studio in Charlotte. Was the guy that helped me lay out the magazine and do the final piecing it together. But his artist there, and I can't think of Paul's last name to save my life. Anyway, he and I would sit down, and I'd say, well, here's my idea for a cover, and I'd draw some stick figures and that sort of thing. But anyway, all our covers were, for the most part, artist renderings. And actually he made big, really nice full-color drawings for the covers, which at one point, I guess, I don't know, I think George Napolitano has the ones from WWF, but I guess Jimmy Crockett Jr. probably still has the artwork from the Crockett magazines. But, yeah, that was... we do, and we also during that period of time in '75, I was just saw that on Bruce Tharpe, who's the president of NWA currently, on his website, going back earlier in the week, the cover for the NWA magazine, which I also designed and edited out of the Crockett office in '75, '76. Terry Funk's on the cover.
Nice. And it mentioned, obviously, you were a part of professional wrestling as a wrestler, as a trainer, but you also got to take part in working with some of the biggest names on the mic, in this case, on the headset, however you want to refer to it, with the likes of Gordon Soley, Bob Caudle, Lance Russell, and the good old JR, Jim Ross. What was it like working with these great names? Was it intimidating? Were you scared? Did you just have a great time and just laugh the whole time? And then what was it like working with these guys?
Well, it's funny when that question comes up, Felix. A lot, people say, well, to make that, to work with each individual, but professionals, adjust, and I obviously try to consider myself a professional, but these guys were, it was never a problem. Actually, Soley and I, he's the guy that gave me the idea that I wanted to be in broadcasting. I actually got my break in Eastern Canada in 1970. Rudy Kay's promotion, and that's where more or less accidentally I ended up filling in there for his commentator who had to go back to Toronto because of a death in the family, and Rudy threw me into the breach, as it were. I'd never done, I'd been interviewed, but I'd never done queued out the commercial, queued back in, and back then it was just there was only one person on the mic, But that was solely actually in 1967 when I was NWA Rookie of the Year. I met Gordon in Tampa, and I watched his work, and I thought, my God, this guy is not about him. It's not about getting him over. It's about selling the business as a shoot, and as a sporting event. So that was one of the things that perked my interest in being into broadcasting. And, of course, I had talked to Rudy about that when we were both wrestling in Charlotte and were next-door neighbors, so that when he needed somebody to fill in up in Halifax, I happened to be the guy. I happened to be in the right place at the right time, I guess. So anyway, working with, Bob, Gordon, JR, Lance, and Ed Capperell, who you may or may not know was the voice of Georgia Championship Wrestling for a long time back in the 60s. And he came to work with us in Mid-Atlantic later on in the 70s. And Charlie Platt, who I did the Southeastern show with out of Dothan, Alabama. And, of course, I designed and created the Southeastern Championship Wrestling format and show and stuff in Knoxville in 1974, 75. But, yeah, working with those guys was amazing. It was fun. They're professionals, and it was just each one has his own indistinctive style, but it was easy to blend in. I guess the best example that the story I always tell when this comes up is if you've seen Night of Legends from Smoky Mountain.
Okay.
That was the first time that JR and I ever shared a microphone. And, we had met in the past, but actually that was the first time we ever worked together. And on the break, when they took intermission, we went to the back, to get a drink and so forth. Terry Funk came up, and he said, I've been watching the monitor back here. That's the way wrestling matches should be called, the way you and Ross are doing it. He said, how long have you worked together? I looked at my watch. I said, about an hour and a half. And he said, nonsense. I said, no, Terry, seriously, today's the first day. But that's how easy those guys were to work with, and they're all class acts. I still see Cottle and Ross at, Fan Fest and reunions, and, of course, Gordon is gone, Ed Capperell's gone. I saw Charlie Platt at the Mobile Gulf Coast Wrestlers reunion a couple of years ago. So, but, yeah, they're all amazing guys, and it was, as I say, I've been blessed. As a wrestler, I worked with some of the best ever. As a broadcaster, I was blessed to do the same. So it's tough to be bad, Felix, when you work with such talented people.
That's actually true. That's actually very true. And you have your own little promotion going there at a training facility and so forth. And I was just, what was it like for you to sit down and create the shows for the Brian Pillman Memorial Show as you were bringing in a lot of the top talents to give a great show in honor of a great man and who left a lasting impression on those who were able to and privileged enough to watch him on television or work with him in the ring. Tell us a little bit about some of those shows.
Well, we're both Cincinnati boys, and actually we'd never met until later in his career, and that was through a mutual, a gentleman here, Perillo Performance, John Perillo, has a supplement line. He works with professional athletes, bodybuilders, golfers, MMA guys, and so forth. And I was senior trainer for John for a long time. Anyway, that's where Brian and I met. And then Brian, once they had the ankle fused, had come up to to HWA, which I had at the time, to see what he could do about, getting back into the ring and working around that fused ankle, which was frustrating to watch, and I'm sure for him far more frustrating than it was for me. But anyway, the whole Pillman thing started as a small show, and when I say that, that's the way it started. We the first year we ran it 4 years. The first year was at the Norwood Junior High School gym, which is where Brian had gone to school, and we had Steve Austin coming in. Steve did not wrestle, and who was a longtime tag team partner of Brian and a close friend. So Steve was coming in. Then we were able to get Benoit and Jericho from WCW as a match. And Sonny, of course, was coming in. And as it was, talking to Dave Meltzer, he said, if you get somebody from ECW, you'd have the trifecta. And I thought, wow, yeah. So, of course, Candido and Chris and I had become friends in Smoky Mountain. And I had never met Paul Lee at the time. And so I called Chris. Of course, like I say, Sonny was coming. And I said, hey, here's what I'd like to do. Well, of course, Al Snow lives right up the road, used to, up in Lima, Ohio, a couple of 100 miles up the road. And so anyway, I ended up getting Candido against Al Snow for that first show as well. So I remember calling Meltzer's phone and leaving a message. I hit the trifecta. But so each year thereafter, we were the only company in the world, as far as I know, to have all three major promotions under the same roof on the same night. And again, I felt blessed because the fact that these promotions trusted me, to deal with their talent and make them all as close as equally, important as you possibly can in a situation like that. But the show grew from that point. We turned away 400 or 500 people that night and seated a little over 1,200 in the junior high school gym. And the show grew from that point till the fourth show. We drew about 2,600 plus people. And, of course, at that time, I was with WWE. There was no longer WCW or ECW. So, and we'd done it 4 years. Brian's widow had remarried. And the guys were, the beautiful thing about it, Felix, these guys came in and worked their butts off for free. This was their day off. And, the three major promotions paid for the plane tickets. We supplied the hotel rooms, and we fed them, picked them up in limousines at the airport, made sure they had a weight room to work out in. We treated them like VIPs, which they were, but they worked for free. I'll never forget that first night, the first show at the junior high school gym. Terry Taylor and I were sitting up in the bleachers, and he's watching Benoit and Jericho, and he said, my God, they work harder for you for free than they do for us for pay. But, it was the cool thing was everybody, it was just an amazing atmosphere. But, everybody sort of went out to compete with each other, but it wasn't like I'm going out there and blow you away or, I'm going to have a better match than you had. But everybody just, everybody stepped up. And, of course, out of those four shows, there were a lot of amazing moments. But I think as far as a match, and a match that I used to teach with, and I know other people do as well, is the Benoit Regal match from Pillman 2000.
Benoit Regal, wow. Those two incredible performers.
Have you ever seen that match?
No, I've seen a lot of their matches, but that one in particular, no, I have not.
That it's on YouTube because I use it.
I was going to ask you that too, yeah.
Yeah. In fact, you'll know it's the one from that show because you'll see me jump up on the apron at the end. It was just they just blew the people away. They did. It was, and it's an amazing. It's a match that every independent wrestler should watch. It's about professional wrestling, not professional acrobatics or showmanship. Or it's a competition, an athletic competition, and they drew the entire. At the end of the thing, not only were 2,000 people on their feet, But the crazy thing was the boys, we were in the Schmidt Fieldhouse at Xavier University here in Cincinnati that night, and the dressing rooms were all downstairs. And the guys could hear the rumble and knew that, that the match was bringing the people along emotionally. And the guys were coming up and elbowing each other trying to find the best spot to watch this thing. And I had started way back by the soundboard, which was probably 25 yards from the ring. But as I felt the people coming, and I knew these guys were having a masterpiece, and of course, one of the benefits of being a promoter, you can go any damn place you want, right? So I ended up squatting down by the apron before the match ended because I was just, it was one of those things. Of course, I'm an old beat-up wrestler anyway, but I want to be a part of this. You want to, you just know it's something special. And so when it was over, I jumped up on the apron and hugged Benoit, and it was an amazing match, But yeah, those shows were special. They were in all aspects. We had such amazing stars, and those things ran. I mean, we started with photos of the stars around noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Then what we called the independent showcase, which was the guys out of the power plant, the guys from once I had the WWE contract, the guys out of OVW, plus some other better independent guys from around the country. That started at 5. That portion of the show ran till around 7. Then we took a little break and then came back with I guess what you call the main attraction. Is the stars from the 3 major promotions. Plus we had, auctions, JR Stetson, D'Lo's chest protector, woman's gown, Benoit's boots, and that sort of thing. These things ran from almost noon to midnight, and nobody went home. I mean, it was just, that kind of atmosphere.
I believe that, definitely. All that great stuff and the memorabilia afterwards, man, just amazing. And I wanted to mention, of course, looking back on your career in professional wrestling, if you had the opportunity, at some point, let's just say, you come out of retirement, you want to have one last match. If you had the opportunity to get back in the ring and wrestle one more time, whether it be somebody from the past, somebody you might have been working with but not necessarily in the ring, or even currently, who would you have liked to step in the ring with that you never got the chance?
Wow. Well, of course, Buddy Rogers. I never had the opportunity to even meet Rogers. We were just never in the same territory. And I would have loved to have worked with him. Obviously, like I say, he was my childhood idol. And a guy named Dickie Steinborn, don't know if you know the name or not, who was an amazing talent from back then. I don't know about the current crop. I would have loved to have worked with Benoit. I mean, regardless of his personal issues and stuff, this guy is one of the top talents I've ever seen in 55 years in the business. Yeah. He convinced you. He was a great professional wrestler. But but there's so many. I probably would have. I did get the opportunity to work with Flair when he was a rookie, when he first came into the Carolinas. I never got an opportunity to work with Steamboat. Harley I did get to work with. I don't know. When I go into, I'm running a small training operation here currently, but I go out and do these weekend camps, and I always ask God if he could just make me 30 years old for the weekend, because I'd love to get in and show more than tell, But it's there's no rehab for this business, Felix. There's no 12-step program to get rid of the addiction called professional wrestling.
Once it's in your blood, it stays there for sure. Absolutely.
It is.
I wanted to ask you, as we go ahead and start to wrap this up, got 2 more questions here. Number 1, do you have any upcoming shows if fans want to keep up? Obviously, we mentioned the 2 websites.
If they're interested in working with me, obviously they can contact me at les@epwt.com or Les Thatcher at zoomtown.com. just getting involved in there. I do these weekend camps around the country. I know I'll be going back to the Monster Factory this year, to Deep Southern Championship Wrestling in Georgia. Probably for Antonio Thomas up in Massachusetts. I've talked to Cue Ball Carmichael about doing something with him in North Carolina. The one big thing that's going on now, it's not just about me, but it's the NWA/Mid-Atlantic Legends Fan Fest in Charlotte, July the 30th through August the 2nd, excuse me. And we do a 4-day training camp there. This will be the third one. And along with myself, Tom Pritchard, Lance Storm, Nigel McGuinness, and Rip Rogers, and Jerry Briscoe will be in attendance to work with the kids. It's a 4-day camp. We train all in the morning, 8 to noon. Then we take a break. We come back and do an hour and a half, 2-hour Q&A session in the afternoon. There's a Saturday night show, a Sunday afternoon show, which some of our people will be on. It's $319 for the training, and that also gets you into the Hall of Heroes awards banquet on Friday night and all the Q&A sessions. It's an amazing time for everybody. But and this year, Greg Price, the promoter, is debuting the documentary Mid-Atlantic Memories, which he has produced, and I'm glad to say I have a little part in, I think. And but I guess the great thing is, like last year, we had like 44 kids in the camp from as far away as Edinburgh, Scotland, and London, England, from Canada, from all over the United States. And at the end of the 4 days, the trainers vote on the best trainee of the camp. And that trainee receives a $2,500 Reed Flair Memorial Scholarship. And so that's, it's something to shoot for. Plus, it's a great place for the young independents to network with other wrestlers, with independent promoters. And, of course, if you're interested in getting looked at by the WWE, Jerry Briscoe is a certified, authorized scout for the company. And I know for a fact this year we've got probably about 10 kids coming out of the Monster Factory. But it's a great thing. You could, anybody's interested in that, you can go to NWALegends.com, MidAtlanticLegends.com, and get all the information. But like I say, I'm available for weekend training camps, or like we are running a camp here with the Christian Wrestling Association International in Hamilton, Ohio, which is like Greater Cincinnati. And we train Tuesday, Thursday evenings, and Saturday mornings.
Okay. And my final question for you, I'm going to put you in a scenario, and let's see what we can do with this. I'm going to say, let's just say Vince McMahon Jr. calls you tomorrow. Says, hey, Les, I'm thinking about the next class of Hall of Famers, and I wanted you to kind of help me choose, or at least maybe name a new class for 2016. You have got to work with many of the great names. If you could help name maybe three that would go into the class in Dallas, who would you choose for that class?
Is Austin in already?
What's that? Steve Austin?
Steve is in already. Well, I know they're down on doing people that are already deceased, but I believe that Ray Stevens should have been inducted up in Northern California. Ray is just such an amazing talent. So I don't know if they want to do it in Dallas, but there's a guy who has been shortchanged, I believe. Wow, I'm trying to think of somebody who isn't in currently. And I'm sure if you and I want to stir up some controversy, I can say Benoit. But we're talking about as a wrestler here. We're talking about as a wrestler here. It's like O.J. Simpson is in the College Football Hall of Fame, which has nothing to do with his personal life. He's a football. It has to do with him as a football player, and it's like the Benoit family. Let me say this: I was close to Chris, to Nancy. Nancy called a bunch of us the official honorary uncles for Daniel. And I was affected by that whole thing because, like I say, I was close to all of them. And but this is about Chris as a wrestler. This is not about Chris in his personal life. So
that does kind of touch a nerve for a lot of people, but those who remember watching him and were blessed to watch his matches or even get the chance to work with him would definitely say for the wrestler, he should be recognized. But I definitely that's unfortunately that does touch a nerve for a lot of people. But
sure, it's not going to happen. Whether if I owned the company, somebody would probably think, no, you need to think better of it. But it's like when I use the videos, like the Benoit Regal match. I said, listen, this is not about what he did that weekend. This is not about his personal life. This is not about. This is about him as a wrestler. Watch him as a technically excellent performer. Forget the rest of it. You have to, at some point you have to separate those things, I think, but so Ray Stevens would be one, Benoit would be two. Wow, I don't know, Felix, you are putting me on the spot. I could think of a bunch of guys that probably never wrestled for WWE, and I guess if you're talking about Dallas, you almost have to talk about Fritz von Erich, don't you?
That's a good name to bring up. That is a very good name, but I think they went in together as a family. If you put them in separately, that would still not be a problem. But I know that in the same class for Steve Austin in 2009, the Von Erich boys, the Von Erich family, all went in together, and I believe Kevin accepted on his family's behalf. I'm not sure if they all went in. I think it was just the brothers, but it might have been Fritz as well. But yeah, that would be a great name considering it was Dallas, or even possibly the likes of the Freebirds. Because PSAs has not been put in there yet. There you go. That would also be valid. I do believe. There's it's so subjective. Gosh, Felix, you really have put me on the spot. I don't know. No, it's just your opinion.
I have worked with so many amazing people. That I think need to be, when I received the Hall of Heroes induction in Charlotte 2 years ago, I made mention, I said, in this room, I said, I've probably worked with everybody in the wrestling business in some capacity, as a broadcaster, as a producer, as a trainer, as a wrestler, in some manner. And I said, if I stood and thanked everybody, I'd be here all night. So you realize I've been at this crazy business for over half a century. So I've been blessed to have not only worked with the best of the best, seen the best. And so I hate to designate. I don't know. If you come down and name me 3 or 4 people, and I'll pick you one more out of that 3 or 4. Now I'll put you on the spot. How's that?
Well, I can think of a few names, that have still yet to be put in there, but you're right. They tend to kind of maybe one to possibly 2 that are no longer with us, posthumously putting them in there to the Hall of Fame. But those are some great choices, absolutely. And I just want to say, as we go ahead and wrap this up, because I know you got other priorities you got to take care of, I definitely am thankful that you made time to come on and chat and give us a piece of your life, because you've definitely had an incredible one thus far. I would like to definitely take this opportunity to extend an invite to maybe do a part 2 somewhere in the future.
Sure.
And delve a little bit more further into your wrestling career more. But I think we definitely hit a lot of good points today. And
I'd be more than happy to do it again with you. One of the trainees a couple weeks ago said, "You've got a story for almost everything." I said, "When you've been at this crazy business for 55 years, you'll have a story for almost everything." But yeah, it's been a hell of a run. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I'd be more than happy to come back again. And thank you for having me.
Oh, not a problem. Thank you again for sharing your story, and we'll definitely have to get you back for a part 2 in the future. I will keep in touch with you to set up a future date and time. But I just thank you. I can't thank you enough, and I hope you enjoy your day, sir.
Thank you very much, Felix. It's been a pleasure. Take care.
You too now. Bye-bye. There you have it, folks. The one and only, the legendary Les Thatcher. I figured I'd save that question about Ambrose and some of his other trainees that he's got the opportunity to work with for a part 2. He delved in and touched on so many topics. It's best to kind of leave the fans wanting more, and I believe we did that. I believe we gave you a little sample. You know what he's about. You want to hear more? We'll get him back. We'll touch more on his wrestling career, maybe a little bit more on his broadcasting, what it was like working with Vince McMahon Jr., and just some of the talents today, his opinions on them. You can't go wrong with that. Incredible, incredible guy. I just can't thank him, Mr. Thatcher enough. I've been working with him for about 2 months, and we finally were able to sit down and have this great conversation today, and that was just awesome. Stay tuned for part 2 coming in the future, folks. But on behalf of my team, who are absent today, this is Felix closing out for Pipebomb Radio, saying, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars, guys. Good night, everybody.